From our television studios on Slaughterhouse Road in Belize City, welcome to Love Television's Evening News for Thursday, November 10, 2016. Tonight, our stories range from the heartbreaking death of Ian Sambula to concerns surrounding the HPV vaccine, and from military tourism in Belize to the sale of imported ham and turkey in Belize. We'll get started with a look at the top stories. Four-year-old fire victim dies during treatment in the United States. Health officials suspend administration of HPV vaccine following concerns from parents. Belize National Teachers Union wants Prime Minister to rescind order for salary deduction. Leader of the opposition says PM's meeting with bondholders is the result of mismanagement of the economy. Also in tonight's newscast, we will tell you what the progress is on getting a 13th senator, while the country's main opposition party has nominated 2 women for the Integrity Commission. And is the idea of military tourism taking shape? We'll tell you what international reports are saying. 4-year-old Ian Sambula Carr passed away yesterday in Galveston, Texas, USA. The young boy was severely burnt when his home caught fire on the 4th of October on Aloe Vera Street in the Lake Independence area of Belize City. Ian was flown via a private jet to Shriners Hospital on October 7. Hipolito Novello reports.
It was last night that Natalie Hamilton, the aunt of 4-year-old Ian Sambula Carr, was given the heartbreaking news.
Call home and my son Kenmar answer me and I said, Kenmar, only get the news about Ian? He said, yes, mommy, Ian dead. So I tell him, oh, what going on? But my sister don't tell me early in the day before I go to work that my nephew never made it to go. They said that all the kidneys, they fail and they had up on dialysis and he couldn't pass stool by himself or anything like that, you know, and the belly just may start to get swell.
Ian was receiving treatment at Shriners Hospital for Children in Galveston, Texas, when he passed. He had received severe burns after the house he was in was set on fire by a stranger. Ian is the second child to die due to the incident. 11-year-old Aaron Gabriel perished on the night of the fire. 8-year-old Empress Hamilton remains at Shriners receiving treatment.
Empress still the fight for life. And I say 100%, but the doctors over there, really they try their best and they try to help her and they do whatever they could for her. He talk and think, and then when they say when the video chat it and think, he cry and say he want to come home. But the doctors, they have the eye closed down because they say eyes may get damaged in the fire, and you don't know if my niece might even get to see again if I have sight.
Ian's body is expected to be in the country next week. In the meantime, the family prepares to bury another of their loved one.
The people there from over there, from Texas, very supportive and they help her in every way where they could. Even though the boy they still they try support her, you know. It's so sad like what I said, but then they try their best and we really appreciate that they even try to help my nephew, you know, because we alone couldn't afford for me do that plan for your own. But the only thing is that the boy young, just when they start to live a life and then have a short life, you know, get the rabbi life, you know. That's the sad part about everything that get rabbi life.
This is not the first time that the family's home has been burnt down, and all they want is for the attacks to cease.
The first time I burned down my daughter's house, nobody ever did. Just the house and the things and gone. The second time, you know, they burned the house, but they gone like night. People that watch TV really pick me down watch TV, they watching and reach and things. Why I want to ask this person will do this? If you have a heart, if you have a soul, if you have people, how you feel for running in our house and lighted fire for children and big people? We lose somebody now. I don't know. I'm a world person, I know. Well, get hard about me and get gun and me go and look for nobody and thing. But I wish the officers would step up and do something about this.
Police has yet to charge anyone for the crime.
Police have nobody hold for this thing when happen that hurt a lot. And then I'm gonna be real and I say it like this. I don't really want to be evil or anything like that. But if I don't know that who, I don't want to kill them. I want to torture them because they put my family through too much. You know what it is for back to back to lose a family members there. Huh? That's not easy.
Reporting for Love News, I am Hipolito Novello.
Exactly 1 week ago, health officials called a press conference in Belize City where it was announced that they would be taking a proactive approach against the human papillomavirus, HPV. It was proposed that young girls currently in Standard 4 would be the ones getting the shot aimed at preventing cervical cancer. Of course, this would have happened with the consent of the parents, but from what we have learnt, the consent is not so forthcoming, as parents are concerned of the side effects and the long-term effects as well. Love News sought an update from the Director of Health Services, Dr. Manson Era, who says that they are aware of the concerns being expressed.
We are aware that there's a little bit of a revolution, and we're noticing the social media situation in terms of some negative feedback and what I think are some serious misconceptions, I think, floating around. We can't be defending everything that goes on social media. I think the best thing is we have to be cognizant of where we are and try to be having interactions on an individual basis at the different schools, and also using different media outlets to get our message across. But and again, this has to do with misconceptions, because this vaccine has already been in country for more than 5 years. It's not like you're putting anything new in Belize.
Despite the dozens of reports available online that speak to the effects of the vaccination, Dr. Manson Era noted that the ministry has done its homework both locally and regionally, and there are no adverse effects from the HPV vaccine.
And the information we have managed to gather from being administered in private sector in Belize over the last 5 years, no adverse or serious side effects have been reported to those who have gotten it, who have actually had to pay for it, and have gotten it in Belize. And again, when people float around ideas in terms of very adverse side effects, I think we have to be aware and cognizant of where the source is, because most of the internet stories are not necessarily true. Not everything that Dr. Google says is entirely true. So you have to be able to document the source and take it from there.
Now, you said that you have had no adverse effects reported locally. Is that the same case in terms of around the region?
We asked around because, as we had noted, we are one of the last countries to actually embark in this process, and nothing as what the media is, social media, then is suggesting. Actually, when you look at the stories and the links of where people are reporting it, I mean, it's a legal lawsuit against the Spanish group, those kinds of things. It's on an individual basis, but the scientific evidence behind the vaccine, I think, is rather overwhelming when you read it in that context. And you also understand that other countries such as Australia have been administering this for more than 10 years now.
With the concerns being expressed, Dr. Manson Era says they will embark on an educational strategy, but in the end it will still be up to the parents to decide.
I think it's educating folks on as I said, on an individual basis, and trying to have media interaction. At the end of the day, the parent makes the decision. What will happen, I think, because you have also a sizable amount of people who are beyond Standard 4 who want to be included in the vaccination package. So after we have done our rounds and you have the uptake that isn't there, the vaccines will be given to those who go on a waiting list right now. So I am fairly confident that we will make use of the vaccines, that you have more people then that are being properly educated in the process, and they will have to start an uptake in terms of this vaccine.
The cohort chosen for the 17 doses that are already in country will be young girls in Standard 4 who are not sexually active. Since the stalemate reached between the Education Minister and the Belize National Teachers Union, a coming together of both entities is yet to happen. And with that, the ministry went ahead to meet with the management associations for the pre-primary and secondary schools, where it was decided that the deductions from the teachers' salaries will take place in November. Love News understands that the BNTU is now reaching out to the Prime Minister for his intervention, as explained by Minister Faber.
Council of Management of the BNTU met over the weekend, and I know for certain that they sent a letter to the Prime Minister on Monday. And as you know, the Prime Minister left the country on Monday. So I'm actually acting Prime Minister at this point, and so the letter came and I had an opportunity to see it. I have said that I will not respond to that letter. I think people might view that as a kind of conflict, and that we will wait for Prime Minister Barrow to respond to that letter. But the letter basically asked that the Prime Minister, in his capacity as Minister of Finance, rescind the memos asking for the deductions to be made by the Ministry of Education. So they're hoping that they can get a response from him. I have not spoken to the Prime Minister since he has left, and I am not certain whether he will respond while he's away or when he is back, but he normally is very good at responding.
Minister Faber was a guest on the morning show today. One of the questions posed to him was, why not pay the teachers for the time they went on strike?
Will not solve the problem, contrary to what those persons who take that position believe or try to put out. There are many teachers who did go to school, and you hear, in fact, as you listen to those persons who are sympathetic to them, that they even feel that a bonus or some kind of reward should be given there. So imagine how much hard done they would feel if it is that they will collect their pay and those teachers who did not go to school will collect their same pay. You know, this, I've said to people, is not a joy for me. It is a painful decision to make in many respects. It is a difficult decision to make, because in a way you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. Any side of this argument you take, there will be people who would be unhappy. But my duty and my obligation is to try to be as fair as possible. And I think it is fair that those persons who did go to school receive their salary. It is also fair that those persons who did not go to work don't receive their salary. If it is that we're trying to make up some of this time, our option for doing that is to amend the calendar. And even though we're not obliged to pay for that time, we're still compensating. It gives the people a chance who want a reward to get a little extra. It gives those who have lost money from the deductions to make up some of that money. And it gave them the right, of course, the same right, to go on strike, to make the point which the government yielded well to. And I want to say that I respect the outcome, certainly, and the whole process that brought changes. Nobody can dispute that. I think any government official who told you, who would have sat and told you that everything was well in the government and there's no good outcome of all of this would be lying. But fair is fair and right is right, and my obligation is simply to do that. It is not a popular thing for many. Some people will look at it and criticize. Some have gone as far as to say you are ambitious, you want to do things, you want to try to make everybody happy. So that is what you should be doing. Just pay them, make everybody happy. Well, everybody will not be happy. And sometimes in leadership you can't
be setting a precedent
just take
as well
a popular decision just to appease people when you know it's not the right thing to do.
Another decision coming out of the meetings with the association was to provide an additional 6 days of classes for the students in an effort to make up for time lost in the classroom. Those days will shorten the Christmas and Easter holidays. Prime Minister Dean Barrow is in the United States on official business. PM Barrow is in New York, where he's meeting with GOB's legal advisors on various matters. GOB intends to commence discussions with bondholders for possible restructuring of payments or reprieve of some sort due to Belize's economic and financial challenges. According to the government, these challenges include low growth, rising fiscal deficits, a deteriorating balance of payments position, and declining sovereign debt indicators. Leader of the opposition, John Briceño, however, says it has more to do with mismanagement.
That there's anything that can be done to help the country, to help us through the difficult period that we're going through, we would support. And if we can get a better deal than what we have, we would certainly support them. But it is ironic because, if I remember right, the Prime Minister was about 2-3 years ago when they do the renegotiation, he was boasting that they have settled it once and for all. And now here we are a few years later, he has to go cap in hand to meet with the bondholders again. And when you look at the reasoning as to why he's saying that he has to go back, is that what comes to mind is the entire mismanagement of the economy. That the United Democratic Party has been a failure. They have failed as to how they have been handling the economy. Most of the productive sectors have been in trouble, and they've been crying out for help, they've been crying out for leadership, and this government has been unable to provide the right leadership, from the sugar industry to shrimps to bananas, citrus. It is obvious that they have failed in the management of the economy. They have failed as to how they even manage their finances, because we know there's been a lot of bloated contracts. Now we know, for instance, in the Ministry of Lands, where we have found out that over $70 million have been paid out in compensation, yet the compensation bill has not gone down. We know that the government continues to spend and spend and spend, and now here we are being unable. The Prime Minister is admitting that they would find it very difficult to be able to make their payments on the Super One.
According to the government, GOB plans to meet with bondholders before the end of November to discuss measures necessary to place the 2038 bonds on a fully sustainable basis. The Prime Minister is expected to be back in the country on Saturday, November 12. The People's United Party has sent out the names of their 2 nominees for the Integrity Commission. A release came out from the party's headquarters today stating, and we quote, "The People's United Party is pleased to announce that Leader of the Opposition, Honorable John Briceño, after careful consultation, has nominated Mrs. Melissa Balderramos Mauller and Mrs. Claudette Greenidge to serve as members of the Integrity Commission. This is in accordance with Section 3.2 of the Prevention of Corruption Act, which provides that 2 of the members of the Integrity Commission shall be appointed by the Governor-General, acting in accordance with the advice of the Prime Minister, given with the concurrence of the Leader of the Opposition. The PUP has every confidence that both Mrs. Balderramos Mauller and Mrs. Greenidge will aptly represent the people of Belize on the Integrity Commission. We wish them both all the best in their new capacities." End of quote. The process to select the 13th senator that will represent the non-governmental organizations continued yesterday at the George Price Center for Peace and Development in Belmopan, Cayo District. 22 NGOs recognized by the Attorney General for their good standing with the law elected a steering committee during yesterday's meeting that will facilitate the election process. The steering committee is comprised of its chairman, Janelle Chanona of Oceana, Vice Chairman Osmani Salas of the Belize Tourism Industry Association, Treasurer Armando Abban of the Belize Scouts Association, Secretary Amanda Acosta of the Belize Audubon Society, and Media Relations Officer Froilat Salam of the Sarstoon Tamash Institute of Indigenous Management representative. Of 143 NGOs working in Belize, only 22 have been deemed in good standing with the law under the NGO Act. Taking that in mind, the steering committee has as a priority to ensure equal representation among its members. The steering committee will ensure that as many NGOs working in Belize are recognized as being in good standing and can participate in the selection of the 13th senator. A deadline of December 16, 2016 was set for NGOs to comply with requirements by the NGO Act. The committee is urging NGOs to contact the Attorney General's office and the steering committee to discuss the reason their NGO is not listed. The meeting yesterday also served to draft a list of criteria for the senator that will represent the NGOs. The senator is asked to be a Belizean that has lived in Belize for at least 1 year and has no allegiance to any other country, be an active member of an NGO in good standing for at least 3 years, and possess a letter of endorsement from the NGO they are attached to. Other requirements include excellent written and oral communication skills and must comply with all constitutional requirements to become a member of the National Assembly. It is of importance that the senator be nonpartisan with no affiliations to any political party. With January 17, 2017 being the deadline to submit the name of the NGO's nominated senator to the Governor General of Belize, acceptance of nominations from NGOs will close on January 3, 2017. Belize is celebrating Women Entrepreneurship Leadership Day tomorrow. It is a global movement that celebrates women entrepreneurship. Women Entrepreneurship Ambassador for Belize and President of Belize Center of Training and Development, Danelyn Mivit, spoke with Love News about the conference, which will feature leading women entrepreneurs in the country. The forum will discuss the opportunities women have to develop a business in Belize,
where we will bring together women and women supporters in a forum where we get to talk and find out about opportunities that will support women entrepreneurs.
In Belize, what is the entrepreneurship landscape like for women currently?
I believe like any other space, especially throughout the Caribbean. For instance, if I were to say to you, when you look at what it's like for women unemployment in Belize, they're 3 times the number of women unemployed as compared to men out of the Statistical Institute of Belize records for this year. And so as a result of that, there are many initiatives undertaken to support women in skills training. So for instance, you would be familiar with programs put out by the Women's Department or the YWCA and many other such. And those seek to provide women with skills that they can use in order to earn. However, the next step of that, which is about entrepreneurship, building and growing a business, is where we find that there is such a great need for women to get those skills. And as part of that as well, the further for that is how do they get funding for their business? How do they grow their business?
Statistically speaking, do we see women's businesses having less survival rate?
A regional research was done on women in entrepreneurship, and what it discovered is that only 6% of women who are employed in the entrepreneurship space end up having a business that is a growth business, and a growth business is qualified as one that actually end up providing employment. So it does suggest that there are a very high odds that growing a business for any entrepreneur is challenging.
Women face specific hindrances different from those of men when trying to succeed in business. Mivit speaks of these obstacles.
Are there any obstacles that women in particular face when they get into the workforce, into the business field that, let's say, are not common to men?
One of the strongest I can think about is the fact that oftentimes women do not have assets which are typically required in the traditional form of lending, and so having properties in their name to be able to secure financing for their business. And so that is a constant need that women talk about, and how do they overcome it. And it is a challenging one that needs innovative measures, and the Fundraiser, which is a flagship program of Miss Valerie Brandt, is one of the ways in which we are seeking to bring an innovative and new way to address that issue.
And funding being hard to access by women entrepreneurs, Fundraiser is one of those programs created to address the lack of funding and is now actively engaged in helping women sustain a developing business.
my flagship initiative as Commonwealth Businesswoman Ambassador, and I've partnered with A. Cecile Watson, another Caribbean entrepreneur, who has a crowdfunding platform called Pitch and Choose. And so with that, we are doing a crowdfunding campaign. Belizean women can actually right now, today, go to www.fundraiser.com and they can apply for grant funding, provided that they meet the qualifications. It's a competitive process. Then they will be assessed and they will have the ability to receive grant funding after the crowdfunding campaign has occurred. Right now, also, Belizean entrepreneurs can support by becoming a riser, by donating to the campaign, by offering rewards. So anybody who is interested in aiding the growth of women entrepreneurs can actually go to that website and find out how they can do that.
The Women Entrepreneurship Leadership Day Conference at the Biltmore Hotel and Plaza starting at 9 in the morning. The term military tourism has been mentioned on several occasions, particularly by the commander of the Belize Defense Force, Brigadier General David Jones. Commander Jones has spoken of expanding its school for jungle training with the goal of attracting militaries from around the world to come in and train in the jungles of Belize. In today's edition of the Manchester Gazette of the UK, they have boasted of Irish foot guards being in Belize testing their operational skills on a rigorous jungle warfare exercise dubbed Mayan Storm. The article reads in part, and we quote, "The exercise is named after the ancient Mayan culture that had previously dominated the region and the hurricanes that batter the coast. The guards are deployed deep in the heart of Belize's rainforest, learning how to fight using the jungle itself as a powerful weapon and defense. Most challenging of all for the Hounslow-based soldiers that most commonly are recruited from Liverpool, Manchester and Ireland has been learning how to navigate and survive amidst the natural dangers that lie beneath the verdant canopy. The normally immaculate guardsmen can find jungle training a real culture shock. The discipline involved in keeping ceremonial uniform clean and polished is transferred into a determined struggle to survive in what is commonly termed a dirty jungle." End of quote. The exercise consists of 3 levels, namely basic, intermediate, and live firing package. The second Binational Seminar in Education and Research collaboration between Mexico and Belize commenced today in Chetumal, Quintana Roo. The main objective of the Binational Seminar is to strengthen the academic relationships and cooperation between Mexico and Belize. In order to achieve this objective, the University of Belize, UB, the Embassy of Mexico in Belize, the University of Quintana Roo, and El Colegio de la Frontera have been organizing the binational seminars. It is expected that these seminars will encourage Mexican and Belizean researchers, teachers, students, and administrators to work together on projects that will enhance the academic and educational cooperation between the two countries. The keynote address at the opening session was delivered by Belize's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Wilfred Elrington. Ministers of Agriculture in the 9 countries that comprise the International Regional Organization for Plant and Animal Health, OIRSA, met today in Belize to discuss regional issues that are affecting the agricultural sectors in their countries and to make recommendations for improvements. New to the Ministry of Agriculture, Godwin Hulse was present and active at the regional meeting precisely because this year's Belize has the presidency of the organization. Minister Hulse tells us what is being discussed at OIRSA's regional summit.
This is one of the conferences in which certain resolutions will be passed. There are reports being issued on various aspects as it relates to plant and animal health in Belize. We passed a couple of resolutions. One was to establish a regional laboratory for animal health, which was in Panama. We're going to do that, and that is for classical swine fever. And the other one is, of course, is to establish a veterinary, an investigative laboratory in Guatemala. We will also have a report from an Australian counterpart on quarantine services in Australia.
We also spoke with the Executive Director of OIRSA, Efrain Medina Guerra, who spoke about programs that the different countries are undertaking and the recommendations being made.
Important to have this meeting here, where Belize have the presidency of the Committee of the Ministries. We are trying here topics very important for the region. We have a program that is going to be submitted to them about the variables, climatic and health, and animal health and plant health, in order to have reports, bulletins, and everything about some problems that we could have with different pests and diseases for plants and animals, in order to have surveillance and early warnings for the people, for the farmers, and for everyone. The ministries have agreed to make the agreements specific with those countries and the laboratories in order to implement these projects in the beginning of the next year, and providing also the economic resources in order to make these projects to work in the region. And Belize have the presidency in this moment. This is, and the minister, Godwin Haltz, is committed to work hard with OIRSA and make all of these projects and programs to be approved today and to put them in practice since next year.
OIRSA is comprised of Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, and the Dominican Republic. With the Christmas season comes the demand for ham and turkey. While some do support the local economy when purchasing these products, there are those who rather theirs to be imported. Today, in speaking with the Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, Sustainable Development and Immigration, Godwin Hulse, we asked him about the issuance of importation permits and restrictions. Minister Hulse stated that permits were issued before he undertook the ministry, but for the coming year, he plans to place a restriction on the amount of importation and give priority to local production.
Before I took the ministry, permits were already issued for hams to various operators who annually and traditionally get permits to bring in certain amount of hams. What I understand the ministry did, of course, is to balance that along with the domestic production so that the domestic production is not disenfranchised. That was done just before I took the ministry. Turkeys are straightforward. There are only two people, and they jointly have agreed to issue some permits, that some permits could be issued for one to bring in turkeys for Christmas as well. But I want to signal from now that next year, sometime around July, we are going to do a thorough census of what we have locally, because the push of this ministry is to promote local production, which saves foreign exchange and ultimately earns foreign exchange, and of course create jobs and that. So my personal push is production first, and then we will import to supplement any shortfall that exists. As I understand, there are several producers, and we need in July, we'll be doing it in July of next year, so that well before next year Christmas we should have that data in hand.
Well, as you hear, the minister says that restrictions will be placed on importations. While hundreds of teachers were adamant on taking part in the industrial action led by the Belize National Teachers Union, there were those who chose to remain in the classrooms, even if the students were not attending class. Faber was asked earlier today whether those teachers would be compensated via a bonus for their commitment to their profession.
I'm very sympathetic to the teachers who attended school, and I have to be, because that was our position. But at the same time, I have an obligation to be fair and an obligation to try to not stir the mud any further. And so those teachers who were at school, they're, I don't want to call it a reward, because there's really none, but those teachers will be paid for the days that they attended. And in fact, now that they would be required to attend school on those days that have been added on to the calendar year,
paid for that as well,
that they will be paid for that. So if they want to view that as a kind of bonus, then that is what they can call it, but I won't call it a bonus, nor am I calling what happened with the teachers who did not turn up to work any kind of punishment. And we're trying to make sure that those teachers get an opportunity as well to make up some of the lost salary by giving the 6 days additional on the school's calendar year.
Teachers will see the deductions reflected in their salaries at the end of this month. 44 public officers completed a 3-day frontline customer training today at the George Price Center in Belmopan. Femcruz tells us about it.
3 days training was sponsored by the Ministry of Public Service. Charlotte Neal, the facilitator, explained the importance of training.
It's a very intensive 3-day training, and it ends with an evaluation. Basically, what we've been enforcing are basic standards for service improvement, namely telephone standards. And so we anticipate that when customers call the various departments and ministries, they will the quality that they experience from the telephone service will be greatly improved, as well as the attitudes and behaviors of our public officers, as they're more aware now of what is required of them in terms of customer service. By the end of this year, we would have trained at least 450 public officers in customer service.
Love News spoke to 3 of the participants who explained how this training will help them to provide a better service.
I must say that this customer service program was very, very, very educational. I hope to use what I have learned here and distribute it and help others to do the same thing that I've learned in my department, so that I can strengthen my organization and make the public service proud. I hope to take what I learned from this training to my workplace, like stuff like how to handle a phone call when a customer calls, how to talk to them, how to direct them to a certain person, and I also learned how to deal with them when they come into your office, how to dress, how to do proper face gesture, and so on.
I learned a lot today at the workshop for the last 3 days, how to handle the phone and how to treat my customers over the phone. And I hope to carry this to my office and better off myself in furthering my career as a public officer.
This is Brother Femcruz reporting from the nation's capital city, Belmopan, for Love FM.
The Nurses and Midwife Council is holding its annual nursing conference today and tomorrow under the theme Developmental Care of the Newborn. The 2-day workshop will consist of theoretical training today and practical training tomorrow. Agustina Eligio, Deputy Director of Health Service and Chief Executive Officer, spoke of the theme being very timely.
Begins when from the utero. And from the utero to the external environment, the newborn makes a transition, and we need to ensure that that transition is at its optimal. Our nurses, especially for those who work in that environment, need to be abreast, they need to be knowledgeable, and they will also need to teach the caregivers, the parents, how you care for these newborn. It is also from this newborn care that the quality of life you will need to indicate what quality of life this newborn will have. It is a 2-day workshop. What we're having today is more the theoretical aspect, and as I rightly stated, all nurses will be having that exposure. But for tomorrow, it will be specifically for nurses who work in NICU, for nurses who work with neonates, for nurses who work in nurseries countrywide.
Nurse Eligio also shared some of the developments that have occurred in the area of neonatal care in the country.
Over the past 5 years, how can we say the landscape of neonatal care has changed, and what resources has the Ministry of Health developed in that area?
I would even want to take you even further from the old Belize City Hospital to what exists today. At the old Belize City Hospital, we had a small unit. We used to call it even then a nursery. Today it's the neonatal intensive care. Personnel have grown. We've had specialists in those areas, both in medicine and nursing. And as we make that transition to a higher level of care at the Karl Huschner Memorial Hospital, training continues. We continue to build capacity on a daily basis, and the technology has improved. So in all aspects, the capacity to better care for neonate is being upgraded. I must also say that nurses within NICU or any of the neonatal care within the country, these nurses, it is mandatory that they be abreast. It is mandatory even for your relicensure. So there needs to be a proof of your training within your area for you to be relicensed with the Nurses and Midwives Council.
Facilitator Sherry Wise and Patty Sterner spoke about some of what the participants are learning and how it will improve their work.
They are learning about how oxygen, the effects of oxygen can affect premature infants negatively. They will also be learning about grief and loss and how to work with families in the NICU.
I'm going to be talking about developmental care, and I'm also going to be talking about family-centered care in neonatal intensive care unit. And then I will also talk about the importance of positioning and preventing problems in the future with these little tiny babies.
So we're hopeful that we can bring some strategies that we've used in our own units to help prevent problems and disabilities in the future for the babies. We could position our babies in better positions to help them from a developmental standpoint, and that we could change the environment to make it more like the womb in order to help protect the baby's brains.
The nurses that are caring for these babies are basically leaving their thumbprint on the babies for the rest of their lives. Every interaction, any contact they have with the baby has the potential to change their brain for the rest of their life. So developmental care is basically brain care.
Around 140 nurses and caregivers attend the two-day conference. 56-year-old Murphy McLaren, also known as Jihad, was charged with the possession of 8.6 grams of cannabis when he appeared today before Magistrate Norman Rodriguez. McLaren pled not guilty to the charge. He was released on a bail of $600 and his case was adjourned until January 17 of next year. The incident occurred around 7:30 this morning. McLaren was driving a black Ford Explorer on the Philip Golson Highway coming from Orange Walk when he was stopped at a police checkpoint in Sand Hill Village. The police officer at the checkpoint said he decided to search the vehicle because he smelled the strong aroma of cannabis. According to the police, the search resulted in the discovery of the drug. As a result, McLaren was arrested and charged. 7 persons, 3 men and 4 females, one of them a 16-year-old girl, were charged with drug trafficking for 229.4 grams of cannabis when they appeared today before Magistrate Carlon Mendoza. The men were 25-year-old Shaquan Almendares, his brother, 28-year-old Darnell Almendares, and 31-year-old Roberto Montejo. The women were 50-year-old Karen Almendares, 27-year-old Tasha Almendares, and 22-year-old Trisha Bengushe. Montejo had pled guilty to the charge, but Magistrate Mendoza entered a plea of not guilty when Montejo said that he had no knowledge of the cannabis and it did not belong to him. They were each offered a bail of $2,000 and their case was adjourned until January 9, 2017. They all met bail except for Montejo, who was unable to pay a fine of $205 for which payment was outstanding. The incident occurred yesterday. The police reported that cannabis when they searched a residence on Electric Avenue in Belize City. Police are investigating a shooting that occurred in Pink's Alley in Belize City yesterday just after 9 o'clock last night. 18-year-old Kentroy McCoy was shot on the right foot while socializing on Pink's Alley. He stated that a lone shooter approached him and fired 3 shots in his direction, causing the injury. McCoy was transported to the Karl Huschner Memorial Hospital, where he was treated and released. The Southside Strike team was out yesterday along with the K9 unit when they found 50 grams of cannabis hidden in a black plastic bag in a zinc fence on Iguana Street, Belize City. Today, police arrested and charged Delon Hines for possession of a controlled drug. This morning, between the hours of 4:30 and 10 in the morning, whilst conducting an anti-drug operation, the Southside Strike team, along with members of the K9 unit, made 3 drug discoveries, weighing a total of 601 grams of cannabis. Police found around 191 grams of cannabis in an abandoned lot on Crawl Road, another 395 grams in an abandoned lot in Antelope Street Extension, and another 74 grams in an abandoned lot in Arlington Drive. All drugs were labeled as found property. The National Primary School Track and Field Championship was held today at the Marion Jones Sporting Complex in Belize City. Students from schools across the country gathered to show off their skills. According to the National Sports Coordinator, Charlie Slusher, it has been more than 5 years that the championship has been held, and they're hoping to keep the momentum going.
This is a track and field national championship. This is where we have student athletes from all over the country vying to who will be not just the best athletes in certain events, but which district. Normally in our most of our programs, normally it will be a school that will become like for example basketball, the national basketball champion. But for track and field, it's a little different. The district will become. So that means that all the schools in that particular district has to work together to win the most medals, and the district that wins the most medals will become the national champions today.
How many schools are participating today?
Well, there's a lot. This is again normally there's only 1 or 2 schools from each district that participate, but track and field is a little unique because you have athletes winning from for example in Corozal you might have about 30, 40 plus schools. So in this case you might have more than 10 or 15 schools represented here today by the different athletes.
The Belize district received the most medals. Our thought conditioner for today comes from O.S. Marden. It reads, and we quote, "Prosperity flows only through channels that are wide open to receive it. Doubt, fear, and lack of confidence only work to close these channels." End of quote. And with that, we conclude tonight's newscast. Be sure to log on to our website at www.lovefm.com for transcripts of our news stories. Thank you for watching. I am Ernesto Vasquez.